morning, good evening, everyone. This is Luda Kopkina with GAI Insights. Welcome to Daily AI News, where we rate new AI developments as essential, important, or optional. Please follow along. The articles are at gaiinsights.com/articles. And please tell us what you think and your opinions of what we're discussing. We would appreciate it. Thank you. And today I have Ankash, John, and myself from a regular crew, and Vivek Mukhatia from Pfizer. He's almost like a regular crew. Thank you, Vivek, for joining. Okay, let's start with the first article, Ankash.
Thanks, Luda. So the first one that we have for today comes from Microsoft, and they have introduced Copilot tasks from answers to actions.
Yeah, it's like a little pre-announcement almost. Microsoft is trying to catch up. What did you think, Vivek, on this one?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was at an important. So what this is this Copilot task is described as AI with its own computer and browser, capable of carrying multi-step tasks in the background. This is all we've been talking about for the past month, right? All of it's this open classification, if that is a word, of everything that can you go and autonomously execute tasks based on the user's need and use across different apps, websites, services. What makes this important to me for an AI leader, even though this is just a preview announcement, is that Microsoft is quite deeply embedded into enterprise workflows, and to be able to open up their entire system in a very governed way. This may be one of the easiest paths for users within the organizations to utilize that sort of open cloud autonomous task execution. And Microsoft is the kind of the key provider of the governance layer. And which, if governance becomes the next UI, it's now just a product feature as part of what Microsoft is offering here. So overall, I was tending towards essential, but then I kind of said that because it's not, haven't seen any specific case studies or examples. Let's at least highlight this for the AI leader, that this is coming down the pike for them. Now, I don't know how this implications are around the cost and the increase in token use and all of those other things that are going to happen. So they don't highlight any of that information. That's important for me.
Okay, thanks, Vivek. And it's not yet really open to use. You have to sign up with on the preview list and be admitted. So, and they talk about opening it up broader when they see how it works, right? What did you think, Ankash?
I was on important as well, Luda, as Vivek mentioned, because of Microsoft's distribution, their penetration in every enterprise software stack, right? It's essential. But since it's still in preview, so important for any AI leader to understand that something like this is coming out, but still not out. So for that reason, important.
Okay, John, we're going important. What did you think?
Yes, announcement where from a market leader.
Yeah. Okay. Important it is. Let's proceed to the next one.
Okay, the next one comes from VentureBeat, and it is titled OpenAI's big investment from Amazon comes with something else, new stateful architecture for enterprise agents.
Yeah, this is very, very interesting and potentially very important to AI leaders. What did you think about this, John? And please tell us what it is about.
Yes, and it's not very important. It's essential. That's where I'm going. So there's this notion of stateless and stateful in terms of the operating environment. So if you step back and you say, okay, what have we? And you're saying, Vivek, we've been talking about for the past few months, right? It's all about agentic activity. So dialogue versus agentic, or in addition to agentic, that's something that is versus. And of course, the underlying technological difference. Well, there are many, but one of the most important ones is what's the state. So what's the memory? What's the context? What did I last say? What's my history with this? What tools have I used? What are the variables of interest that, are in state to have the agent work? Because, it's like the old philosophical question, if you lost your memory, will you be you, right? And so the question is, if an agent doesn't have persistent memory, is it an agent? And so Amazon's done an amazing thing here where they now are providing an environment that you can use Azure and the OpenAI models to either have a stateful context or a stateless context. So you can either have a conversation that's kind of like Instagram for the mind, if you will, and then you can have an environment that takes your context with you. And the coming together of these three, two giants and one, major upstart is quite amazing, And so I think this is essential reading because this gives you the ability to set up in AWS a stateful environment using Azure and OpenAI. And I think that's a big deal. I think that context is going to be a lot of where the competitive advantage is. Gee, what's my longitudinal relationship with my customers? What are my internal processes look like? And so I think this is a big deal. I think this is essential.
Okay, thank you, John. And it's interesting, VentureBeat goes into how the deal was structured, not deeply, but at least it talks about how OpenAI navigated between Microsoft and AWS, which is fascinating. And so they were able to leave the agreement with OpenAI between Microsoft and OpenAI intact and layer the AWS on top of it. And that's fascinating.
Yeah. The thing is that Microsoft contract, and I haven't dug into it, is I want to know what their definition of AGI is, because Microsoft gets access to all the IP out of OpenAI until they hit artificial general intelligence, at which point they fork. And I'm curious what that definition is. Anyway.
My head goes to Sam Altman because it just, incredible in terms of business negotiations. Vivek, what did you think?
Yeah, I'm there with John. I was kind of leaning essential because this is AWS is in every enterprise, if not so. And it's the one additional thing that was mentioned in the article is that it's built behind this OpenAI frontier platform, which again, it's to John's point, it's talking about the shared context and agent execution layer. And making it more easy to build this type of agent harnesses while having long-term context, state memory, and multi-step workflows. All of these things that are emerging, right? And if we are moving towards a future where autonomous workers, they will need to have memory and this kind of stateful orchestration behind it. To John's point earlier, one of the most recent definitions that I've seen is it's on some benchmark around what the definition of AGI is from an OpenAI perspective. I think that's what they're thinking about is around the GDP valve benchmark that they have created, and it's some number on the GDP valve. That's what there was a shared definition. But again, we look forward to hearing what that means. But again, essential for every AI leader as they start building these swarms of agents in their organization.
We are going essential. Ankash, anything to add?
Essential for me as well, Luda. I think just one thing that came to mind was, so while OpenAI is making these deals with Microsoft and AWS as well, and we have increasingly seen that with Claude Code and a few others, that the harness around these models is becoming much more important compared to the model itself. So you can put this same harness on top of any open model like Kimmy 2.5 and others, right? And it might give you similar performance as Claude Code, right? So do the models from OpenAI, when they are working with AWS, become commodities, or how will that work? Because seems like all the information, memory, context, the login details, the traces, everything will go to AWS if they are doing the stateful thing, right? So that's an important thing to understand, that how will that work?
I agree, Ankash. I was going to comment on that because it's almost like what we're arriving at is commoditization of the lower level where Microsoft is operating, interestingly, right? And AWS will sit on, or other harnesses will sit on top of it with all the wisdom of the context, of the memory, of how the agents are put together, all the security level. So this is an interesting shift that's happening. We'll see how it evolves.
I think it's related to the HB article we're going to look at shortly.
Okay.
we're the strategic control points. And they have very different strategies right now. You look at Microsoft and where does memory sit? It really sits kind of at the team level and the agents integrated with it has a lot to do with how the connectors have been set up to the Microsoft products inside. Then you look at OpenAI has the most robust ability to manage memory at the individual and group level. And then you look at Anthropic, they really have put memory into projects and those activities. And Grok doesn't really have it's kind of in their project stuff. And then Gemini is, it's more at the project level. It's not at the or the gem level. It's not at the kind of individual or team level. So they're all playing very different games. I think Google is really being pushed by oh come on, is it Emoti? Anyway, Suleiman, and Emoti too, right? I'm sorry, anyway, whoever the head guy is at Google, not the Anthropic guy. And he said, first solve
Demis
intelligence.
Hassabis. Yeah.
Pardon me?
Demis Hassabis.
Thank you.
Hassabis.
Yeah, Demis, says, solve intelligence, and then you solve everything else. So it's very interesting. I think OpenAI is very much going for context as a strategic lever.
Okay. Essential it is. Let's proceed to the next one. And thanks, Brenda, for commenting along here. Thank you. Okay, let's proceed to the next one.
Yes, so the next one comes from Anthropic, and it's a case study about how Doctolib accelerates developer productivity with Claude Code.
Ankash, please tell us what you think about this one and what it is about.
Good. So the case study is about Doctolib. It's a European healthcare management platform which has over 400,000 health professionals and 90 million patients on their platform. And what they have done is they have added Claude Code to reduce their engineering admin work. So basically reviewing all the bottlenecks that are coming in their codes, and Claude Code helps them resolve those bottlenecks. They are also helping Claude Code to onboard their engineers faster. So now the engineers can self onboard in under 5 minutes, and they have then made those repositories that every company is doing of prompts, custom commands, etc. So while they shared sort of good examples in terms of what they are doing, the details, as with every other Anthropic case study, those details are missing in terms of how they are doing it. So for that reason, Ludai was optional on this one.
Yeah, optional from Ankash. Vivek?
Yeah, I wish they provided a little bit more around the architecture and how they did the implementation. It's a good use case. Now we have this agentic DevOps also happening. So every function is becoming agentified, and now we're seeing some case studies around it. So I was between an option and important, but there's not much information in there.
Yeah, unfortunately, if you wanted to replicate it, it's not there. John, what did you think?
Yeah, definitely optional. Look, I think it's ironic that they haven't built an agent to build better case studies.
Yeah, or follow the best practices. I hope OpenAI and AWS will now develop really good structure following the AWS best practices in that space. Okay, optional it is. Let's proceed.
Okay, the next one comes from HBR, and it is titled "Look for New Ways to Create Value When Deploying GenAI."
Yeah, very thoughtful article based on data. What did you think about this, Vivek?
Yeah, it was a really interesting read. The core thesis of this article is that Gen AI is a lot of the organizations and enterprises are focusing on Gen AI efficiency gains, but those are being competed away, turning sort of this differentiating activities into almost commodities, and then forcing leaders to look for new value pools, right? And then so it's not just faster execution on tasks. That's what we've been talking about. And if you look at one of the examples that they did provide, is I thought was really interesting, is essentially what GAI Insights is doing. Right, is that the curating is becoming a lot more important because of the amount of information that is being generated. The modes are going to be very different than that what we've assumed for the last 2 years with Gen AI. It's not just productivity gains. It's really identifying new values vectors for the use of AI for every enterprise. And they provide a lot of different ways. They could give you good examples of what are some of the ideas and strategies for creating value, the internal ones as well as external ones. And it's worth a read for an AI leader. I was between an important and an essential for this article.
Okay. And Ankash, if you can scroll to the bottom, there are 6 questions that are worth actually. I sent this article around already, but it's just these 6 questions that captured my attention. Okay. What did you think about this, John?
Yeah, I thought it was essential. For all the reasons you said, I think it also made me feel good because our strategy as a company is like, anyway, but the one annoying part about this article is they claim at the beginning that the efficiencies created by AI are getting competed away. I don't believe that analysis, and they don't give us any detail, because I've done a lot of those analyses, and to be able to get a single factor at a functional level, and then to use the aggregate factors like profitability of an overall industry based on an early adoption of a new technology is just that's overgeneralizing to the effect of AI in the business. So I think I don't believe the analysis, and it's sad because you get some really good analytic people here, right? Chaudhry's good, and the BCG folks usually do a good analysis. But I think the fact that they did hand waving at the beginning says that their initial analysis is baloney, but their insights are nice.
Okay, so we are going essential here. All right, let's. Ankash, what did you think?
Essential for me as well, Luda.
Okay, essential. Thank you. Let's proceed to the next one.
Okay, the next one comes from Michael Truel, and he talks about the third era of AI software development.
Yes, Ankash, again, please tell us what this is about and rate it.
Luda. So Michael Truel, he is Cursor's CEO. And in this article, he talks about 3 eras of AI coding. So he talks about the first era, which was tab style autocomplete. And then he talks about synchronous agents, what we are seeing right now. And he sort of envisions a third era, which we are seeing some of it right now, but where agent tackle longer tasks independently over longer time scales. And then he shares some examples on how this shift is already happening at Cursor. So I felt this is an interesting read for someone who is looking to understand where the future of coding is going. And in a sense, all the knowledge work, I believe, will go in the next 12 to 18 months because it has been following coding very closely. If we see all the agentic developments till now. So just for that reason, I felt there are some interesting nuggets to take away from this one. But I can be optional as well on this one. So not a hard important.
Okay. We actually had an announcement from Cursor in that direction. There's a use case where they talked about that the environment, that they're using this the agentic capabilities to create code, and all the 30% of pull requests are done automatically or semi-automatically. So so this is, I think, the discussion on top of it. Vivek, what did you think?
Yeah, I'm with Ankaj. This is now we're getting to this agentic SDLCs, and this is not something new. We've heard this from Claude as well. They built Claude Code, the new version of Claude Code, predominantly all with just AI, and we're starting to see these trends among software developers and software developer organizations where they're loading all their work to AI. So now the word I really liked from this article was agent fleets, and now this is kind of launching agent fleets. So some new terminology, but still an optional in my mind.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Vivek. So we're going optional, John.
Yep.
Okay, optional it is then. Let's proceed to the last one.
Okay, the last one that we have for today comes from Bain & Company, and it is titled The AI Enterprise Code Red.
Yeah, John, could you please tell us what it's about? Bain is building on top of their prior article, and does quite a number of conclusions or insights in here. What to tell us about it, and please rate it.
Yeah, I think this is a really good article. I'm going to give it an essential. I think that they're super thoughtful in terms of, what, first of all, what is going to be the basis of competition. So if you go to the first figure, it talks about the moving from the information era to the platform era to the AI era. Um, and we've been doing a lot of work inside GAI about this, which is what are going to be the competitive drivers in the future. And they have, and I love the way they do this. Very simple: velocity of learning, proprietary data and knowledge, and trust and ecosystem control. Now, each of those is a large area, but I think that is very true. And if you go back to the platform era, where they talk about network effects, brand and loyalty, and platform lock-in, if you want to frame for the whole conversation about is SaaS dead or not, I think if you compare these two columns and you say which of the SaaS vendors can move to the AI era attributes, because they certainly have been relying on the platform era attributes, I think you get a long way in terms of dissecting, the viability of SaaS providers going forward in terms of their market capitalization. So just as an example, I think it's a very useful framework. I think that, this notion of cost and experience curves, customer differentiation shifting, industry control points are moving. Completely agree. And then, this notion of prepare the leaders, modernize workflows, prepare the hybrid workforce, institutionalize change. I would argue with the sequence of those, but those are the right activities. I think number 3 actually has to happen before number 2, because the workflow knowledge sits in the minds of the individuals. Back in the expert systems era, there's this whole notion of knowledge engineering, where you're articulating the context, but also the cognition. And the challenge of having an expert is that as you become expert, your neurons get wired, and you don't have as much access to your intuition and so forth in terms of explainability. So the whole field of knowledge engineering is like, how did you get to that answer? Actually, is a science in and of itself. And I think that's part of modernizing the workflows. It's before modernizing the workflows, but that's a nit. I think the Bain stuff's been very uneven, but this to me is a really, really great article. And then it goes down the bottom. Scaling AI 6 delivered patterns, not bad. Bottom up, top down, horizontal, and longitudinal leapfrog. Yeah, I mean that's to me the weakest part of the article, but not bad. So essential reading, I think, in terms of strategic thinking in the AI era.
Okay, essential from John. What did you think, Vivek?
Yeah, I won't argue with John, and this is we're going to go great inflation today for sure. But I'm also with John that this is a really excellent article to make this new concept, right? The center of gravity is shifting from this Gen AI co-pilots that will help humans to agentic systems that execute work, right? We are moving to this, and this article does an excellent job at showing and laying out that transformation. As we start, I think we are in a very bubble in this group, but as we go and educate our enterprises on this shift that's happening, these are the types of articles, especially coming from a thought leader like Bain, would be helpful. So it's AI is becoming this operating system for the enterprise, but how do we educate internal teams on it? And this is a good, really excellent article on that.
And how do we wire both the processes within the enterprise and people being ready to understand and lead that process transformation? So that's the article I mentioned before that we also rated as essential. And I think together these two articles really push the field forward. Okay, Ankaj, we're going essential. What do you think?
Essential for me as well, Luda. I was just realizing that we have had these conversations with many of our clients, and the only thing that this article is missing is the relevant examples to support what they are saying, right? So that should have been there in terms of case studies for every chart that they have shared. But otherwise, really great article, really to the point, actionable insights. So essential for that reason.
Yeah, I broadly agree with what you said. The one distinction I would make is I think that this capability building exercise is actually not emphasized enough here. In addition, the knowledge engineering part, that is, how do you uncover tacit knowledge, whether that's individual tacit knowledge or organizational tacit knowledge as you're doing these workflows. And generally speaking, as you go higher up in the value-added stack for knowledge, there's more subtlety and more interdependence. I mean, there's a lot of busy work, right, that people are happy to get rid of, but there's the whole, that stuff, that's where I think, going back to the article about, AWS and context capture, that when you start to take the main insight and put it together with a context capture as a platform, I flash to, what's the movie with Tom Cruise about the pre-crime Minority Report. I flash to Minority Report, you know what I mean, in terms of, you're not going to have, empaths sitting in a bath of milk like you do in that movie. You're going to have context that, starts to do pre-crime, if you will, or, statistical prediction of organizational behavior in the context of tacit knowledge becoming explicit. And that's very, very powerful. And, we're more habit creatures than we want to believe. And so I think the discovery of this is going to be huge. And the other thing to keep in mind on the back to this main thing, the power of a great framework or an idea on corporate leaders is massive. I mean, if you go back in the history of BCG, when Bruce Henderson combined the learning curve with the growth share matrix, he basically said, okay, you have to get big fast to be relevant, and that created massive amount of asset trading in the LBO range in the 80s and 90s. It pulled apart conglomerates, which were huge in the 60s and 70s. So if this proves out to be as correct as I think it will be, it's going to drive a lot of organizational strategy in terms of where you're going to find scale and what you're going to go acquire or divest.
Yeah, it pushes the leaders to understand where really the value is, how to contextualize it, and how to then leverage it into scale. So it's a very rethink your business type of an article.
I mean, it's the kind of thing that, let's say you're Gartner, for example, and you read this thing, you say, okay, and I've looked at the top. I've looked at the compensation of top management at Gartner and the board of directors, which is available for any public company through a proxy filing called the Dec 14A. Anyway, if you look up there, they're incented on two things: growing EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization, EBITDA, and also growing long-term contract growth. Well, that's not going to get you from that. Those are platform measures. They're not AI era measures.
No.
And so that organization is going to, my prediction is that organization is going to continue to struggle until it flips its measures around to mirror the insights in this article.
And it's applicable, John, to the mass of enterprises out there. The metrics are misaligned. So, and they will, so the leaders that take this very seriously and start contextualizing their really deep knowledge, and then aligning metrics accordingly, those are the ones that are going to win.
Yeah. The only learning-oriented methodology that I've seen stick is in two places. In the military, there's this whole notion of the command loop, right? That Colonel Boyd, in a fantastic set of essays, talk about. It's about getting inside the OODA loop, the observe, orient, decide, act loop of the enemy. So they worry about learning. Corporates, the only thing I've ever seen in corporates in my career that really sticks from a learning perspective, because learning is usually kind of off to the side and it's done by the indirect people and it's not really, is when the learning curve effect went to unit cost economics. That's when it went to the top of the house and people started ripping apart organizations, buying and selling stuff, when they looked at the learning curve from an economic perspective. And I think this is the beginning of a conversation about that. So as we tie AI to unit economics and organization structure, which is going to be more market-like, it's going to be a combination of bureaucracy and market, because agents operating inside an organization, again, back to the AWS thing, operate more like a market than a bureaucracy, and it's much more dynamic. And you put those two things together, that's where it's going to hit the top of the house, and people are going to start buying and selling assets and things like that, and reorganizing based on those things. Because you talk about learning, nobody can be against learning, but executives only care when the unit economics change.
Right, but the unit economics already shifting because there's a lot of a lot of streamlining of processes, right? But this pushes you to come up with new stuff, and then on top of what you're doing in streamlining, right? And that's where the major shift will come, I think.
Yeah, and this whole thing about proprietary data flows, massive. We haven't even begun because the prediction is what, 28, we're going to run out of human-generated stuff on the internet. So we're going to have to train on other things. I think the kinds of things we're going to train on and these kind of stuff that, Vivek's organization is out there collecting. And then you guys are going to have to make two big decisions. Do you share that data in any way? And then what interfaces do you allow out into the marketplace? Because if we look at what happened with with Claude last week, where the Chinese had over, hundreds of thousands of robots hitting for, millions and billions of interrogation. Basically it's like the rubber hose with a model, right? You're sitting the model down under a light, you're beating it till it tells you everything it knows. Well, that's going to be a real issue for Pfizer, right? Okay, well, what interfaces do I allow other labs to get access to it? Do I allow suppliers, buyers, like all that stuff? Because what happens if they take one of my models and they beat the heck out of it and get everything we know? Well, that's a problem. And then where do you put that control point? Do you put it in access? Do you put it on, interrogations? And then you have to start saying, okay, well, what happens if they get smart about how to interrogate this thing? It's going to be interesting.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, we're coming to
sorry, just so long.
But it's excellent.
That's fantastic, John.
Fabulous discussion. Thank you, John, for the insights. Okay, so today we have 3 essentials, 1 important, and the rest are optional. Thank you very much for listening, and a big day. Monday is usually not that. Really, thank you for commenting. Thank you, Vivek, for joining, and we'll all see you tomorrow.